thumbnail sketch of what this might be talking about. In medieval medicine, there would be a doctor, and this is going to be about as much as they're going to be able to do most of the time, because they really couldn't. They could look at a body from the outside. They might collect some of your urine and look at that and look at the stars. If somebody was already dead, they might have cut that person open and found the different fluids that are inside of a body. And so medieval medicine, it's going to kind of be based upon the fluids they were able to find. And these fluids, let's see, I mean, like, basically there's blood, there is bile and black bile, and I think this is the bile, and this is actually phlegm. Okay, so those are fluids that they had found with people, and the way that this figured in with medicine is that you would have these 4 fluids. So that's not. And if somebody had too much of one or another, that might make them sick. And so they might like try to give you a transfusion or do something that would help with regards, or give you some herbal treatments, so that if you had too much of one fluid and that was making you sick. But this could also determine some things about your personality. You know, melancholy is definitely a word that we still use now. If a person is depressed, we would say that they're melancholic. And in medieval medicine, this would be that you have too much of the black bile, and this is making you maybe sick, but it also might just be making you depressed. Well, now we're starting to get sort of an idea about how these fluids might affect a person's temperament. And so you might go to a doctor and talk to them and say, and the doctor might say, so there's a medieval doctor, and he might look at the patient, and this might have to do with, his health, but it might also have to do with the person's temperament. Is the person particularly sanguine, or is the person melancholic? Well, this is determined by the different fluids in their body. So now we get back to this passage. We'll let all of his complexion choose me so. And Bevington is saying, you know what? That doesn't have to mean skin color. She might be saying, let all people that are of his temperament choose me so. So now we get like the different meanings of this term. Here, when we were looking at the first meaning of it, he was drawing connections about how it was kind of a shadowed livery, a dark uniform, that it had a hue, a color, and this looks definitely like skin color. Here, it doesn't necessarily look like it could. So this is skin color. This, is it skin color or is it temperament? Well, there's one more use of the term in the play. There's one more use of the term in the play, and that's going to point us towards really opening this up and kind of putting us into the problems about how race and insiders and outsiders and the way that some of these qualities have changed historically. Well, the last time that the word complexion is used is in Act 3, Scene 1 of the play. And you may remember that there's Salanio and Salario, and those are the merchant Antonio's friends. They enter and they're having a conversation about what's happened with some of Antonio's ships, and then enters in Shylock. Well, at the same time that Portia's casket game is going on, Shylock has a daughter who has run off with one of the Christian friends of Bassanio. And Shylock is so distraught. he says to Salario and Salanio, "You knew none so well as you of my daughter's flight." And they're really just taunting him. "That's for certain. I, for my part, knew the tailor that made the wings she flew with." And here's where it gets kind of interesting. Salanio says, "And Shylock, for his own part, knew the bird was fledge." And fledge means fledgling, or she had gotten the feathers that she's going to fly with. Shylock, for his part, knew she was fledge, and that it is the complexion of them all to leave the dam, the mother. Okay, so it is the complexion of all birds who are about to fly that they're going to leave their mother. Well, this is the final use of the term complexion in the play, and here we really start to get, a sense of all the possibilities about how you're going to read this and how it relates to the different romantic plots and the different ways that race and culture are thought about. So here's Act 3, Scene 1. There's one way that it's used. This is the end of Act 2, Scene 7, and there's the initial use of it that we had. Okay, so this is Act 2, Scene 1. Here he's talking about complexion, and as we were saying, this is definitely skin color. And this last one, Portia, "Let all of his complexion choose me so." This one I think is kind of up in the air. Bevington suggests it could be temperament, and if you like Portia, you're going to have to work with the question of, is this his race? Well, this third use of it, this is definitely not race. Shylock, for his part, knew that the bird, that is his daughter, was about to fly, and that it is the complexion of them all to leave the dam. So complexion, I would suggest, is much more like what Bevington was suggesting in the earlier note, that it's temperament. And here, if we look at his note, let's see if we can zoom in on that. So if we zoom in on the word, we're going to lose how, well, we'll just cover everything else up here. Well, here the word, and it's kind of fuzzy, but here definitely, he says complexion. It's like natural disposition, that it was Shylock, for his part, knew the bird was fledge and that it was the complexion. So here complexion definitely does not mean race. It is the temperament. It is the personality of all people, of all basically young people, that they're going to leave home. And so, we're kind of left with this question about, does race, is it a matter of skin? Here it was. In the case of Act 2, Scene 1, that's definitely skin color. In the case of Act 3, Scene 1, it's definitely not skin color. And the problem, or the issue that many of you may face looking at Portia is this race here, or is it a question of temperament? Well, if you're going to write about this, I think it's a wonderful issue. I've just started to open some things. We're going to look at some sources later on that are going to help you to deal with this, because definitely we know that insiders and outsiders really do play a part in how we understand this play.